The Ghana Integrity Initiative is demanding the public declaration of assets by public officials, adding it will enhance transparency.
We not just want public officials to declare their assets. We want declared assets to be published.
President Akufo-Addo last week hinted in an interview that all his ministers have declared their assets, but at a stakeholder forum to help tackle corruption, the GII and its partners disagreed with the current procedure of ministers declaring their assets in camera. We will be getting deep into the skin of this matter and get all the responses from the people who matter. This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Bryan. The GII and its partners say they are bent on fighting corruption, but identifies one major challenge hindering anti-corruption efforts in Ghana, explaining despite the almost daily reports of misuse of public funds, many do not volunteer information on the acts and sanctions for culprits, and the sanctions are not stringent enough to serve as a deterrent. But more importantly, the anti-corruption campaigners say public officials must declare their assets in public. We can listen to Mary Awelana Ada, who is programs manager at the GII.
Publish in the dailies for everybody to see that when Mary took office, I had one car, or I had a motorbike or a bicycle, because the assets are both movable and immovable assets, including jewelry of a certain value. And so we should know what we have. We want to serve the public, and so we should not have any secrets, because we are talking transparency and we are talking about accountability, both downwards and upwards. And so if we are serving, we should be able to tell the public. And so we want publication, and we also want verification, as it is done in other jurisdictions. If you have published the assets, people should be able to say, this Esimesi who says he has published his asset is lying. This is not his. So those are the things we want. Cross-check, publish and cross-check. And then also monitoring. Because after you have published and we have cross-checked, we should be able to, over a period of your tenure, be able to monitor. And it is done in Africa, not just Abrochi. It's done in Africa. In other countries, they do monitoring of these assets on a yearly basis. That's when you are supposed to resubmit what you have gained. And then when there are issues, red flags are raised quickly.
Let's do some analysis now, and Mary Awelana Ada is programs manager. She joins us via phone. Good evening to you, Mary. You want assets declared in public. Government says it's a public document, and so anybody, including your outfit, can push for it. Does that resolve your challenge?
That is good. Good evening to you, Aisha, and your listeners, your viewers and listeners as well. What we are saying is that anybody can. What you are saying is that anybody can. It's a public document and anybody can go for it. In the law as it stands, what the law says is every public officer should declare their assets within 6 months of their taking office and also after 6 months of leaving office. What we are saying is that that is not enough. Because in the current state of the law, the public officer just declares his assets, dumps it in an envelope, and dumps it again with the Auditor General. As to whether these assets are verified, at that point, we do not know. And so if anybody is telling us today that these documents are public, because these people are public officers, and so we can go for them, what is the process of going for them? The process as it is now is when there is an issue, then the Auditor General has the right to open them up, the envelopes up to check.
But ideally, it shouldn't
And
be so.
Do we have that access? Do you know that? Does anybody in Ghana know? Ideally, what the situation should be, every public officer who takes up public office declares your assets, it is taken to the custodian, he publishes the assets. These assets are verified. And then over time, the assets are monitored. It is interesting that this is happening in other jurisdictions, but in Ghana, it is not so. And so whoever told you it is a public document and we can go for it, maybe the person should come again and educate us on it more, because we don't have that. We do not have that as the law stands.
Well, you are demanding a referendum to make this easier. How do you intend to push this agenda, and how urgent is this referendum?
No, we are not demanding a referendum on asset declaration. The lady who interviewed me asked about the office of the special prosecutor and how effective it would be. And we indicated that in this case, we believe the office of the special prosecutor is a first step towards prosecution and enforcement as we continue to clamor for. But the necessary thing that is supposed to do, or the ultimate, that the people of Ghana would appreciate and be happy with, particularly when it comes to the fight against corruption, would be to have the office of the Attorney General separated from the office of the Minister of Justice. And in that case, we are aware that the law is entrenched. There is the entrenched part, and there is also one that is enshrined, which is easy. But then with the entrenched, we would definitely have to go in for a referendum, which is not being talked about now. And so we applaud the President for his commitment to the fight against corruption by indicating that he wants to set up this office of the special prosecutor. But then we are also of the view that since this special prosecutor will be drawing some of his powers from the Attorney General, who is the official prosecutor of the state, then it... Hello?
Yes, Aunt Mary, you're
Okay,
still
great.
on today's big story.
All right. Then it means that what we need is somebody who is independent, somebody who has a tenure security, somebody who is well-resourced with an office, who does not draw their powers from anybody, like the Attorney General giving some of their powers, like it is happening today with Yoko. Yoko has powers to prosecute because the Attorney General has allowed that. And so that is where we are coming from.
Well, you also talk about monitoring. How do you want this done?
Monitoring is important, and in this case, we talk about the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan. Today, during the presentation, the Director of Anti-Corruption at Strike mentions one of the activities under the NACAP is actually to set up an office, independent office. And this independent office is supposed to ensure that prosecutions are followed through and then sanctions are monitored.
Well, Mary, let me have you hold for a minute and speak with Tunis Amazo, who is in an exams hall, and he just joined us. He has limited time. Tunis Amazo is associate of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Good evening to you. Many thanks for your time on today's big story.
Good evening.
Now, you are unhappy that Ghana, despite the boosting of some strong anti-corruption laws and policies, enforcement is still weak. What could be accounting for this lackadaisical attitude?
Well, thank you so much. Like I had indicated earlier in the day, several factors. The first of which I call trying to understand the incentives which create the sort of situation in which we find ourselves. So the politician, the bureaucrats will take advantage of any situation if it's created, just like any human being will do. So the first thing is to try to understand how people think and how people behave once you create the opportunity for them to take advantage of specific situations. So it's not an easy thing to tackle. It's corruption. It thrives in darkness. So the thing is to make sure that as much as possible you throw so much light on it.
Well, one of the things you also seek to do is to solicit for a public declaration of public assets. That's going to be a bit difficult. That's what people think.
Yes, I appreciate that. I know in such a situation, we need to do some delicate balancing act between the rights of the individuals who are aspiring to be in public office versus the need for us to have a transparent administration and ensure that people are not using public office to amass private wealth. So I can understand if anyone is uneasy about public officers who are supposed to declare their assets, making such declarations public, in the real sense of the word, public. I can understand the anxiety and the discomfort.
Especially when we've come to identify that there's the lack of political will to fight corruption.
Well, my point will be that we need to gravitate gradually towards open declaration. Right. Like I said, I know that there's going to be a lot of anxiety and there's going to be a lot of discomfort with that. But if you're ready to put yourself up for public office, it's a statement, as far as I'm concerned, that you want to be as transparent as possible, because you are, in a sense, an agent managing our resources on our behalf. So as much as possible, you need to be transparent to the people who are putting you in such public office and are taking care of you for as long as you remain in public office.
All right, many thanks to you. Tunis Amuze is
a
Senior Associate of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Let me get back to you, Mary Aulana Ada. Earlier you were speaking, you're talking about how important monitoring after the public officers declare their assets is important.
The internet is closed.
Hello, Mary.
Yes, please, Aisha.
Yes, Mary, I'm just hammering on your earlier point, how important it is for us to do some monitoring, even after we've been able to achieve the public declaration of assets by public officers.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Why we need verification and also monitoring of the process is that for every activity to be effective, you need to know on an ongoing basis you are performing well or not. How do we identify if people have amassed wealth as a result of their joining public office? That's one. It is only when we go back to check these people to tell us what they have been able to acquire during their tenure of office. And that should be on an annual basis. I know for a fact that in the Tanzanian example, they do it on an annual basis. They give you back your forms to update it with what you have. Then this is verified again. So we are able to identify at any particular time public officials who are making very huge gains in their sector. Then we can begin to ask the question, without monitoring, how do we know who is invested more and who is doing this? So that way, we don't wait for 4 years to come back and say, this guy was, Mary was a common idea, and now see, she came to public office, she has 4 cars, she has 3 houses. We need to do it on a continuous basis. Inform the people of Ghana who have a right to information, but also to be able to pick up red flags when they are occurring. instead of waiting for them to happen before we speak here with them, which has always been very difficult for me.
All right, many thanks to you. Mary Aulana Ada is the programs manager at the GII. We can also listen to Mary once again, who feels the country lacks the political will to fight corruption, reason why it's deeply rooted in our system.
Already a provision in the Act, the Criminal Offences Code, that provides for punishment for corrupt officials or corrupt public servants or people who have been cited in corruption and have been found guilty of said allegations. The unfortunate thing is that you see that in the Act 30, it says it's a misdemeanor offense and the punishment goes to up to 3 years. But in the revised Act 30, it talks about corruption being sanctioned to up to 25 years. And 25 years is not a small sanction. And so the law is there. Unfortunately, enforcement is the challenge. And
it's not necessarily the stiffer punishment we need. It's about the enforcement.
Enforcement of the law, 25 years for somebody who has been cited, alleged, and has been incriminated. It's no small thing. Unfortunately, we do not have the political will to even investigate sometimes corruption offenses. If they have been investigated, you and I know that over the years we have had committee and committee and committee investigating alleged instances of wrongdoing. At the end of the day, we have reports that are published which we do not see. And so we don't even know the recommendations that come thereof. And for that matter, we don't know what they are supposed to say. Myself and you were in Ghana when Smarties issue came up. It went back for investigation at the Attorney General's level. We only heard they were supposed to retrieve some money. We do not know what recommendations were also cited in that report. And so the political will to commit to fighting corruption by instituting the stiffer sanctions you are requesting is the challenge. And then when we have political will to even do it, the institutions, like we have heard here today, the institutions' ability to provide services as a right to the citizenry and not as a privilege is another challenge we need to be looking at. Corruption is already a punishable offense. It is not a capital offense where you can say you should go and kill the person. Anyway, but we should be able to retrieve assets. We should be able to put people in prison up to a tenure of 25 years. And that is not small. We should advocate that and let people know that it is there. And then we fight for enforcement of the law because we do not lack laws.
This has been on the table on almost all of the anti-corruption organizations, yet it looks as if nothing much has been done.
Exactly the case because there is no political will to fight corruption. And also we do the blame game thing. The executive will tell you, we have done investigations in the court. We have sent this number of cases to the court to be dealt with. Adjudication takes time. Going to the court, as they say, the wheels of justice grinds slowly. And so we continue to blame each other instead of looking at the issue and dealing with it. That's another one. And we Ghanaians are also not demanding for accountability for the people we put in places of power. The media has a role to play. The ordinary Ghanaian must begin to ask questions.
Let's probe the issue further. Vitus Azim is former executive director of the GII, and he joins us via phone. Good evening to you, sir. Thanks for your time.
Yes, good evening, and you're welcome.
Anti-corruption crusaders are asking for the declaration of assets by public officials, and the argument has been that this can never happen, especially as we've identified that most politicians lack the will to fight corruption. You agree?
Well, yeah, most politicians like the will to fight corruption, and particularly with this one, they have found various excuses not to actually get the declarations published. But we need to remind President Akufo-Addo that he promised us change. He promised us that he will fight corruption. So even if he has no control over the parliamentarians, at least his ministers, he can insist that they declare their assets and grant permission to the Auditor General to publish them. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to declare your assets, put in a sealed envelope and it's lying somewhere and gathered in dust.
All right. So how easy can this be, and how urgent is this call?
Two things. One, the Constitutional Review Commission made a recommendation, and it was acceptable by the past government that the asset declaration should be published and that they should be verified by the Auditor General. Unfortunately, the recommendation and the white paper have been shelved. We don't know what this government wants to do, but if this government is really committed to the fight against corruption, it needs to go back to the white paper that the previous government put in place, and that addresses that issue. It is urgent because even 1 month, in fact, 1 day, you can take 1 day to acquire wealth.
Right.
And then when you come to declare, you put it there. So we need to, it's very urgent. The Constitution actually says upon assumption of office. So the day that they were swearing in, they were being sworn in. If they were very serious, the president could have insisted that you bring in your assets, you submit, you show evidence that you have declared your assets before you are sworn in as a minister. Unfortunately, this has not happened. It has not happened before because the parliamentarians have passed a law that contravenes the Constitution, saying that within 6 months. And 6 months is a very long time, which you can acquire assets and add them to your asset declaration illegally. It's very urgent.
Well, it's very urgent. So what would you recommend to this government, especially this is a government that has promised to fight corruption so hard?
Yes, I would recommend to the president that he should insist, make it a condition that he himself and his vice president take the lead by showing the rest of the people the light, and then insist that his ministers, at least his ministers, follow suit. I'm sure if they do that, especially when about half of about a good number of parliamentarians are also ministers, if they do that, it means that the rest of the parliamentarians will be compelled to do. And once they do, when the politicians do, then other public servants that are required to file will do the same thing.
All right, many thanks to you. Vitus Azim is former executive director at GII. And we've been talking about the call for public declaration of assets by public officials by anti-corruption crusaders, and they're saying that it is urgent and the government must take it serious and do something about it. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. Have a great one.